welcome to this holiday workshop. I am so excited to have chef and recipe creator Lauren Chandler with us today, and we will introduce you to Lauren in just a few minutes. But first, I'm going to have Amy give us some announcements before we get started. Hi, Amy.
Hello, Michelle. Hello, Lauren. It's so great to be with all of you today. I see many of you have already found the chat, and that's exactly what I'm going to tell you to do is find the chat, say hello, tell us where you're joining us from. What's great is we're all in 3 different states to join here, so I love that we can use technology just for some great things like this, and I am ecstatic to see this today. The other great thing that I cannot wait to share with you in just a minute is going to be recipes. We all love new recipes. Lauren has created some of those and provided some of those that we are going to see today. And we were talking just before this started that we love how recipes are a guide. You know, they're just one kind of way to do something. And so she is going to share some additional ways of how she sometimes might modify a recipe today with us too. So thank you for joining us, and I will see you in the chat.
Excellent. Thank you for those announcements, Amy. I will handle the first question that we had come in, and that was a question about closed captioning. Closed captioning is not available live. However, we will have one in the recording, and I will post a link once we get the introductions to where you can find the recording with closed captioning later on this week. So again, thank you, Lauren, for being here today. I know I'm very excited about this because this time of year we are just everywhere with all kinds of gatherings, all kinds of parties, all kinds of holidays get-togethers. And it's great to have high fiber options that we can bring that people can be excited about because they look good, they taste good. They're just bite-sized things maybe, but they're still delicious. So before I turn things over to Lauren, I'm just going to introduce her to you very quickly. Lauren Chandler has taught plant-forward cooking through businesses, unions, and nonprofits in public venues and to private clients for more than 2 decades. She graduated from the National Gourmet Institute for Health and Culinary Arts, but learned as much kitchen hopping around the globe and cooking in restaurants as she did in school. As an inaugural faculty in the graduate level nutrition program at the National University of Natural Medicine, she developed and taught culinary classes for 5 years. Additionally, she's a recipe developer and volunteers for hunger relief organizations, including the Blanchett House, World Central Kitchen, and Providence Milwaukee Hospital Community Teaching Kitchen. Lauren's cooking emphasizes seasonal whole foods and demonstrates that you don't have to sacrifice flavor for fun to eat well. To learn more about Lauren and her business, you can go to her website, which is laurenchandlercooks.com. And I will post a link to that website in the chat. Lauren, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Good to see you both. And I'm so glad you're all here. I was telling Michelle before you all came in how I was up in the middle of the night thankfully I had a notepad next to me, and I was writing down ideas because there's just so much you can do with bases like sweet potato and apple and persimmon, just anything delicious and round that's a base. Like it's just endless. So we're gonna go through the things that are on your recipe, although we're gonna go off script a little bit like Amy mentioned, and then I'm gonna show you some other things too. So let's start with the sweet potatoes here. And I just got so many different types. I ended up cooking off 4 different types of sweet potatoes, some white ones and purple ones, orange, 2 actually white flesh that have different color skin. And all I did was slice them, and I can show you just real briefly. I think this is pretty basic, but the reason that I want to show you is because I think it's really important to know how to hold your knife so that you don't get hurt. Pinching your blade, wrapping your bottom 3 fingers around the handle, and then you have a lot of stability here, rather than having your finger on top where it's wobbly or on the handle where it's also wobbly. And that gives you a lot of leverage to be able to cut through. And I just cut about like somewhere between a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch. and I put them all these slices on the baking sheet and drizzle a little bit of olive oil, a little bit of salt and pepper, and then I use my hands to make sure they're well coated. And I really like to get in there with my hands, really with everything when I'm dressing the salad, because I want to make sure that all of the ingredients are coated evenly and well. And I can do that with my hands, whereas with utensils, I can't tell. And it's also going to be integrated better if I'm using 10 of these instead of just one utensil or 2 utensils. So once I do that, I just spread it out on an even layer on the baking sheet, put it in the oven at 425 preheated. And a little tip is you can heat your baking sheet up in the oven while the oven's preheating, and that will give it a head start. You know, of course, then you're going to not toss it on here because you want to be really careful. You don't want to burn yourself, so you could do it in a bowl and then transfer it. But that will give you a head start if you heat your baking sheet up while it's preheating. Then I want an even layer into the oven for about 10-15 minutes, depending on how thin you cut them, and then pull out, flip them over, back in. And if you find that they're not getting as golden brown as you like, you can put them on the bottom shelf of the oven and that will get them browner. Or you can hit broil, but only for a short amount of time on the top rack because they will burn very quickly. And then you just want to make sure that they're fork tender, that you can pierce them easily with a fork or a knife. And these will last in the fridge for up to 3 or 4 days. So in terms of holiday prep, it's great that they also, you know, they're root vegetables, like great for storage in a cellar. And so if you think about it, you can buy these ingredients way ahead of time. And then you can prep them a few days in advance. And then they're ready to go. I think they're best served either warm or room temperature. I don't love them cold. So you can either, you know, if your oven's warm from something else on the day of your event, just pop them in the oven when it's just still warm and then pull them out. And then it's just a matter of topping them. And we also are going to use persimmon and apple, and they're interchangeable really. I personally like sweet and savory together. So I like fruits and vegetables together. If you don't, then go your own way and just stick with the sweet with those fruits. But we know sweet potatoes are sweet too. Okay, so let's start with this little combination that I love, which is essentially a salad that I make all the time. It's just a mini version. And so when you top these little rounds here, you can use like anything that you already make and love. You could just put a little pinch of it on there. So if you have like a hummus recipe or pesto, there's just pesto tossed with white beans or chickpeas and put a few on top. So there's just so many different things that you can do with what you already know. So this is a riff on a kale salad that I make a lot. And I'm going to just strip the stems or the ribs. And I'll save these ribs though, because there are other things that I can do with them. What I can do later is pull them out of the fridge, for example, and then chop them up finely. And the next time I cook beans or saute vegetables or cook my grains, I can just chop them up and put them right in. So I have these for later. And I'm going to take the greens and I'm going to kind of ball them up. So it's like one ingredient. I'm not chasing all these different leaves and doing them separately, just for efficiency. And then I'm just going to chop this into fine little ribbons here. And you could make a really big salad of this. We're going to just do a smaller portion because then we'll just top the sweet potatoes or the apple or the persimmon or all the above with it. You know, and for this kind of a little treat, you could have just the one topping and then a variety of the bases, or you could have one base with a variety of toppings. So you can just, you know, play around and decide what you like. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit of lemon zest to this. with this microplane. I don't use a lot of tools and gadgets, but I do really like this rasp because you can get your zest and your ginger and garlic really fine. And then a little pinch of red pepper flakes because I like a little bit of heat, but you know, it's optional. And then I've got some garlic, and this is just a baby clove because we're not making a lot of this. And I'll just chop a little bit of that pretty finely, or if you wanted to, of course, you could use the rasp. Just make sure not to get your fingers. Okay, and then next I'm gonna get a tiny bit of salt and pepper, and then I've got some olive oil. I'll just do a little drizzle here, along with some lemon juice, bringing in some brightness, that acidity, to balance everything out and make it come alive. And then I'm going to just use my hands and give it a quick little massage, as a lot of recipes will call it. And you'll only need to do this for, you know, maybe 10 seconds. I see a lot of recipes that say massage your kale for 10 minutes or 5 minutes, and you don't even need to do it for a minute. It'll tenderize. And then we're going to just put it on our cute little base. We have so many colors to choose from. Let's go with this little white one. And I have some pine nuts too, which are really nice in here. I'll put a couple on the base and then just top this off with the kale, and then maybe a couple more pine nuts. And because it's so beautiful, might as well do like another little sprinkle of the lemon zest because it's beautiful and also tastes so good. And you could have also, if you wanted to do the red pepper flakes, wait until now and just sprinkle them on so you can see that red color. So there's one that you can make that is just so lovely. And now we'll move on to the next one, which is, we've got some mustard seeds, brown mustard seeds. And your recipe handout says chives, but I'm going to use green onion instead. You know, this is a formula. So something in the onion family, some kind of a allium is going to be really nice. And what will we do? The brown mustard seeds are often used in Indian cuisine. And when you buy them, let me see if I can hold them up to see if you can really get a good view of these. So you may or may not be able to tell that these ones are not toasted and they're more brown. And these ones are toasted and they're more gray. So they turn gray when you toast them. And I just put them in a small skillet over like medium low. And they'll start to pop. You'll hear them pop. And they're going to want to go flying because they're so light. So if you have a screen, you can use a screen so that they don't go flying. You could use a lid, but you don't want them to burn. You don't want to trap the heat too much. So just make sure you have something to transfer them into nearby so that you can do that right away. And then I've got this is a watermelon radish. And these are just our standard little red radishes. And I'm going to just trim the radish. And I'll do like little matchsticks. So I want a flat surface, so I'm going to cut it in half. And then I'm going really fine with them. And just kind of flip it over. I can stack these up on top of each other. And then, they're tiny. And then I've got my little matchsticks here. So sweet. And then these mustard seeds, I tend to like sprinkle these on soups and in grain salads and in bean salads and on fish. They're really crunchy and provide a nice texture and also a really nice flavor. So we've got green onion that I'm also going to slice up, and it's just like a lot of like little tiny things. And lentils, I cooked some lentils, and that is because I want to make these a little bit more hearty and add more fiber. It's going to add some more protein too, and so you can just cook your lentils ahead of time, or you can get them out of a can. They're vacuum packed options now, and you can just put a little sprinkle on whichever version you're making. So for this one, I've got my green onion and radish, just so delicate and little and beautiful. And then we've got some of our little mustard seeds there, and a teeny tiny pinch of salt just to help bring out those flavors. And then just the tiniest drizzle of olive oil. So there's another one. Okay. Oh, and I did want to open up this watermelon radish. It's not, these aren't available everywhere, but if you do have them in your store, I would definitely recommend them. They're so beautiful and tasty and make a really nice presentation. So that's something that you could go ahead and do little matchsticks. And this could also be a base, right? So there's that. Okay, moving on. I look at all these colors and I think, oh my gosh, there's just so much in the way of nutrition here. All these different varieties.
Lauren, I'm going to have a quick question for you since we're kind of in the little stopping point. Can you tell me if it would be okay if you had foil like on the bottom of the pan while they're cooking on the baking sheet?
That's a good question. I haven't done that in so long. I can't tell you if it would stick or not. I wonder if there's anyone else out there who's done that who can respond.
Yeah, if you've done that before, if you've used foil while cooking sliced sweet potatoes, let us know. And then the other question is, do you spray the pan or do you just put them down the way they are?
You know, I put them down the way they are because I've already tossed them with the olive oil.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
You bet. So the next thing I was going to do is just make like a little version of sort of a citrus salsa. And the way I'm going to do that, I'm going to just do this really quickly because there's a lot I want to get to. I'm going to cut both ends off of the orange and then slice down. This is called supreming. I'll slice off the skin and the pith. I want to make sure to stay really close to the fruit because I don't want to lose any of the fruit. And just go all the way around with my knife. And this is where you really want to make sure that your knife is sharp so that it doesn't end up bouncing off and hurting you, cutting you. Okay, so now that we've got the skin off, the peel off, I'm going to hold it over the bowl here. And you can see where the membrane is. And I'm going to cut in alongside as close as I can to that membrane. And I can go in on one side and up on the next, or I can just cut in from both sides. And you can do this with your grapefruit or, you know, any citrus, pomelo. And pomelo, if you're not familiar with it, it's it looks like a giant grapefruit, but it's very mild and sweet. And I think they're becoming more and more popular. So if you can't find them yet, they might be coming soon to a store near you. So I'm catching the juice here because juice is so good. I don't want to lose that. And then I've got all of my segments here. And then I can use my fingers, or you can use your knife to chop the citrus into smaller pieces. I'm just going to use my fingers to break it up. You can see that it's not being exact here. We don't need to worry about the size of the pieces. We just want them to be relatively small so that they'll fit on top of the base. And you'll see on your handout that I have a sweet version and a savory version. Really the difference is there's no onion in the sweet version, but I like to keep a little bit of chili, a little bit of heat in the sweet version. And you could use cilantro if you like, or you could use mint. And you could also use mint in the savory version. So I think you're getting the theme here now, just really playing around, making it how you like it. All right, so now I'm gonna just chop a little bit of onion to add to it. And the way I'll do that is I'm chopping the hit the top off and keeping the root end intact. And I'll peel off. I'm really just going to chop a little bit of this. And then I can go. And this you can make, I would say this would be good to make the morning of. Another thing that you can do though, see, I'm just slicing that up, one little sliver off, and then finely chopping it and adding it to the citrus. What I did ahead of time though, yesterday, I pickled some onions, and all this is red onion with some lime juice and a little bit of water. So if you do that ahead of time, then you have like these beautiful bright pink onions, and you can use those mixed in. And now we've got our cilantro or mint, and I'm going to just use the mint for now, and then we can use it for both the sweet and the savory version. Oh, sorry, that's a lie. We put the onion in here. Savory. Little bit of salt, little bit of pepper. I have some sweet smoked paprika. Smoked paprika brings in that little bit of heat and also a little bit of smokiness. And that is it. I think I do want to put a nice amount of lentil in there too. There we go. And then you could take, your cilantro leaf or your mint leaf and just top it off like that. And they're so beautiful. So in terms of time, it is really nice to have a lot done ahead of time. So I'm going to show you a very simple version of one of these. So say you are going to use persimmon. Let's move on to persimmon. And we can just slice right when it's time, right when it's go time, just a little bit before maybe your guests arrive. And then I'm going to take a red onion and just put this right on here. And let's go with how about a nice big leaf of mint and another leaf of cilantro. I mean, I'm just playing around here. All these flavors are really nice together. So they're just very simple whole foods and a sprinkle of lentils. And then I have a squeeze bottle that also makes it easier and less messy. And you can get this if there's like a restaurant supply shop in town. They're very inexpensive, and you can always get this online. All I did was put yogurt in here, and then it's less of a mess than using a spoon, but you can definitely use a spoon too. And then I can just do a little drizzle like that, or a little blob in the center, and that's all it is, and it's going to taste really good. And maybe I forgot the lime in the citrus salsa, but same thing here. Yeah, we just do a little squeeze of lime in either of these, just to bring in some nice bright acidity and flavor. And then One other thing you could do, I mean, this is one of my middle of the night ideas, is, you know, if you're cooking your sweet potatoes and you have the ends that you aren't going to use as a base because they're a little too small, well, still go ahead and cook them, because then you have this end, or you could just go ahead and bake a whole sweet potato. And I love this idea of using different colors. So say you got this sweet potato, this purple one, and then you put this little orange guy on top, and maybe you put a couple little lentils, and maybe you put a red onion, or, you know, any number of things. I also have some pomegranate. I was going to show you the way that I like to peel a pomegranate and get the seeds out, but I don't know if we're going to have time for that. So I'll just, we'll wait on that. But then you can put some pomegranates on, and maybe one in the center if you want. And it's just so lovely. It's a really nice presentation. The other thing is, if you've got some ends that you did cook that are, you know, on the smaller side, and you think, well, this can't serve as a base, get some toothpicks. And I'm going to just take a little orange one and a white one and this purple one, and we can make like little mini kebabs. And if you wanted to, you could put some leaves in between, some herb leaves. I also brought out these big white beans and these big scarlet runner beans. If you cook some beans ahead of time, you could also put beans in between, or you could just put a bean spread like hummus in between. You could drizzle it with some kind of a yogurt spread, or simply yogurt, or pesto, or another type of sauce that you might like. So there are lots of little options in terms of presentation. I think that could be a fun variation. And I wanted to show you a couple sweet versions as well. So these are sweeter bites, but also you could even have this as like little bite-sized desserts. So I already have the persimmon cut, so the first one will be persimmon. And I've got a little bit of cardamom that I'm going to sprinkle on, and some honey. And I'll just do like the tiniest amount, because it's already sweet. But I do love the flavor here, and a little goes a long way. And then some pistachio, and then maybe a mint leaf again. I'm a big fan of the mint, as you can see. I feel like it's underutilized, and especially in the winter, it's just nice to have that fresh. It's just nice and fresh like that. And then maybe a little yogurt, or maybe not. So we got that. And that's like, these are kind of assembly line too. Like you can just do a pinch of this and a pinch of that when you're, you know, making them. Or if you have, you know, kids around or multiple people hanging out in the kitchen, each person can get a task. One person does the lentils, one person does the mint, one person does the onion. But you can see how simple it is. And then for the apple, what I'll do is just cut a base. And how about this one? We're going to go with this little bit of tahini and sesame. And all tahini is ground up sesame seeds into a paste. So we'll use just a little drizzle of the tahini, which is so delicious and rich, and we've got a little sprinkle of cinnamon, and then the toasted sesame seeds. And if you want to get fancy, you could use black sesame seeds. I have just a couple of those that are mixed in here. And then if you want to, you could put a little drizzle of maple syrup, or a little bit of honey, or not. You know, again, the apple's really sweet. Maybe you want to put some pomegranate on here. for a little added crunch. And if you toasted some, you could ahead of time toast some pumpkin seeds. And the pumpkin seeds could really go on anything, any of these options. Yeah. Are there any questions coming in? I feel like I'm just throwing a lot of different ingredients and ideas out.
Actually really like the versatility of what you're doing. My husband and I typically have my daughter's friends over and they're teenagers, and we call those apple donuts, and they love them. Just peanut butter, almond butter, any sort of butter, and other little pieces of fruit. They're delicious. So I love that you're saying be versatile with the ingredients, because that's what makes them fun. Here's a question about the persimmon. How do you gauge the ripeness? We found different varieties don't always seem ready in the way we can tell in their store.
That is such a good question. So there are two very common, oh, my sous chef, my feline sous chef just walked in, so hopefully he'll stay over there. So there are two different types that are typically available. This is the Fuyu persimmon, or it was here. And it's squat, whereas the other type of persimmon that you can get is more of like an acorn shape. And that kind has to be super ripe, like so soft and like jiggly, like jello inside, for it to be sweet and ripe and edible. If it's not soft like that, when you bite into it, your whole mouth's going to dry out. It's really awful, and you're going to be turned off from persimmons forever. So don't do that.
Yes.
And then, but Fuyu persimmons, which are the squat kind, they can be either hard or soft. The texture is different, and it does get sweeter the softer it gets. But you can have it either way. It can be more crisp like an apple, or softer like an avocado. So it's really, I would, if you haven't had them before, I would recommend getting 2 of these, and also the haichia, which is the acorn shape. For the acorn one, of course, wait until it's super soft. And then for these, wait for this. One of them, wait until it's very soft. And the other one, try it while it's hard and see what you think. See if you like it when it's more crispy, or you like it when it's more soft. These are on the softer side, but they ripened really fast once I brought them home. I only got them a couple days ago, and I thought I was going to be serving this up much more firm. But they hold their shape, they stay intact. So you can still make this whether they're soft or they're hard, just as long as they're not, kind of gelatinous like the other type of persimmon.
Yeah, I do. And I will say that these Fuyu ones are much easier to get you to like persimmon because of the whole dry mouth of the others.
I think so. I know oftentimes people will think it's there and it's not there yet. You just want to go a little bit further. But once you get to that place, if you like that texture, that really soft texture, then you might really love it. And something you can do with that too is put it in the freezer and have it kind of sorbet. Just on its own, you can just cut it and just scoop it out. And then the other thing, you can make a very quick and easy dessert with it, but just by putting it in the blender with some cacao or cocoa powder. And the sweetener is actually the persimmon, and you don't need to add any kind of sweetener to it. And that might be a nice way to incorporate this fruit into oatmeal in the morning, for example.
Yes, that sounds delicious. My mouth is literally watering. Do you want to tackle the questions now?
Sure, we can do that.
Or do you have more? So I know if I should go off stage or hang on and go through the questions.
Really, like the one thing that I wanted to talk about briefly is just in terms of the presentation, because if you are using these for a holiday, then you really can't go wrong. But there are a couple things to think about. I love using just like a nice white plate, because these are so colorful and it really helps them kind of pop and draw your eye in. But another option is to use another bright color for contrast, and you can just line them up. I personally wouldn't use a platter or a plate that has a lot of pattern and design on it that's really busy. because these are already busy. I wouldn't want to distract from what's actually happening on here. It could just be a little bit overwhelming. Another thing that you can consider is, kind of decorating whatever the platter is. And of course, you can use rosemary, different herbs that are wintry. You can even just use pomegranates, like put them all over the platter or the plate and put your little bites on top. You could use greens, just, a nice layer of spinach and put your bites on top of the spinach. The sad thing about that for me, though, is that oftentimes then the spinach doesn't get eaten. And I'm always the one who's like going for the garnish and wants to eat the garnish. So if you're going to do that, just keep in mind that people might not eat it. However, then you could, as long as you're not like grossed out by the fact that people were all serving themselves, but maybe like there's some leftover sweet potatoes and different things on there, and you just turn the whole thing into a salad. And again, all of these things can be turned into a bigger dish. The other thing, in addition to spinach or greens, is radicchio. And this is a nice bitter leaf that you could either use and just place underneath each bite. And that could be, the intention may be for people to eat the whole thing together like that. Or maybe you just put a whole bed of this down as a backdrop, which can be really pretty. One other thing that I wanted to mention, which I didn't before, is if you're wondering how to fill this, just one of these, you can just spoon it in that way. Okay, Michelle, I think that's a good place to stop. And if there is more time, then I'll go into the pomegranate.
Thank you so much, first of all, for taking the time to go through and explain all the various options. I love seeing in action how recipes are just suggestions and guidelines, and then you can just have a lot of fun with them. So thank you for doing that for us. Mm-hmm. So let's go ahead and go through the questions. And if you do have
Hey, Michelle.
Yeah.
One of them that I want to bring up first, since we're kind of in the showing of some different things. One person asked about keeping the root intact on the onion.
Yes.
And I know that was a huge tip of learning on doing some things of that tip. So I would love to have Lauren answer that one first, if that's all right.
Yes, I was debating. I always like to chop an onion in every class because people always want to know how to chop an onion. So I'm going to continue on and just chop the onion.
I'm going to go off so y'all can see her bigger because that is so important.
Okay, thank you. So we have our onion here. Say it's still whole. We just had the top coming out of the ground. If this were still buried, here's the root end under the ground. So we trimmed off the top and then cut through the center and then peel the skin off. And now is where you will understand about keeping the root end intact. So if we're going to dice this, we already are lucky that we have one cut here. So we don't need to cut this way. Some people do, but I don't find that I need to. I also do see like a little bit of a blemish, so I'm going to remove that. Okay, so I'm going to cut in towards the root, but I'm not cutting through the root. And the reason is I do not want to have to chase all these little pieces all over the cutting board to chop them. Instead, I can simply chop this way. So for my efficiency and time, it's best to keep the root intact. And that way, you just go as far as you can while it feels safe. And then if it starts to feel wobbly, just flip it and keep going. But again, that way you don't need to have all these separate pieces that you're chopping up. I'm so glad you brought that question up, Amy. And then these, you could do this ahead of time, like I did with these little rings, and just put them in, either put them with some water and vinegar or a little bit of citrus. A lot of quick pickles do have some kind of a sweetener in them and a little bit of salt. But it depends on how robust you want this component to be. You could even put some cloves in there, or a cinnamon stick. But I went really simple and just did a little bit of lime, a little bit of water, called it good. Because really, let's keep our holidays simple. There's enough chaos going on. And that's what I'm hoping to get across here, is that these can, lentils made ahead of time, your sweet potatoes made ahead of time, and then just these little things that are easy to chop up and toast up and put on.
So do you always serve these as a sweet potato being on the cooler side, cold, or do you warm them up if you were serving them later on?
So I like to either have them room temperature or warm. And because the toppings aren't warm, by the time you get it out of the oven, they're going to tend to cool off. So I do have them at room temperature, and they're good to go. If you want to have them warm, then what I would recommend is, putting them in the warm oven to heat them, and then just making sure that your topping is very simple and just really easy to assemble. So it's just, you already have put the lentils together with your salsa or whatever it is, and it's just like a quick pinch if you intend for people to eat them warm. Because I know that can be sad when I'm trying to serve warm food and I'm like, everybody get over, hurry up.
That's very true. Very true. Here's another question. I actually like this one. I don't have sweet potatoes, but I have carrots, parsnips, and beets. How would I adapt those if I wanted?
Ooh, I like it. So for carrots, it's going to depend on the size of your carrot. Let me check my fridge. I think I have one. Little something. Okay. So for your carrots, couple things. One, I would say if you're up for the little kebabs, then this is great. Carrots would be amazing for that. Perfect size. And then you can just do, roast these in the oven, same way, and then put a little toothpick in there. The other thing is, if your carrot is big enough, then it can be a base. If it's not, if you chop it on the bias or diagonally, there's a chance you can make it big enough to be a base. I mean, this is a pretty narrow, pretty thin carrot. But if I chop it like this, I think that's decent to have a little something on top. Beets, I would say, are a good bet. You could roast them, or the other thing that you could do is braise them. That's the way that I really love to cook beets the best, is if you put them in a baking dish, like a Pyrex dish, and you don't need to peel them, just whole, and then fill the dish up with water about 2/3 of the way, and then give it a little bit of a glug of olive oil or avocado oil, and then a sprinkle of salt and pepper and any herbs you might want. And cover that with tin foil into the oven. Depending on the size of your beets, you're going to go maybe check them after 30 minutes and then rotate them and put them back in the oven. And just once the knife can just go through them. And then once they cool, you're going to peel them, and you can peel them really easily with your hands. And then you can just slice them into the bases at that point.
What temperature would you braise them at?
I would say about 425.
Okay. That sounds fun. I like that idea as well. And they're so colorful too. And you can do the red, you can do the orange ones, I think yellow ones too.
Very
There's
festive.
Fun ideas out there.
For sure.
All right, here's another one. This is on time saving. Lauren, your tip at the start about prepping the root vegetables ahead of time was great. Do you have any other useful time saving tips you regularly use to help during stressful hosting parties?
I do. And this comes from catering. I've catered over the years, and I don't want to be stressed out when it's go time. I want to do everything I can ahead of time that I can do, because at the end, there's always going to be some things that you have to do right before it's time to serve. So what I will do is I'll look at what I'm making and I'll look at my calendar, and I will literally go through and spread out the tasks throughout the days. Everything from like toast the pistachio nuts to, I mean, every little detail. And so no single day has like a ton of work.
Mhm.
And then at the end, when it's the morning of, or I'm baking the sweet potatoes off, and maybe, not maybe, yes, my lentils are already cooked. So on that day, it's like the herbs. I'm like, this is easy. I've got my sweet potatoes in the oven, and I'm going to dive the herbs, and I have a few other things, but really just being good to yourself and preparing everything you can ahead of time. And, you can, if you're using recipes, look at the recipes. They might not tell you, but I think, if you're learning and you're on this call, you're eager to understand like how far in advance you can put something together, and you can do certain steps. And the other thing is, your Facebook group is such a great option. Reach out to your friends. They'll chime in and help. And also after this webinar, if there's any questions that you have for me, I'm on the Facebook group, so feel free to ask any questions that you need for clarification.
That was great. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to post a link, or Amy, if you don't mind posting a link in the chat to our Facebook community. That way, if people do have questions as you are preparing to host, as you are running through something, maybe you have a recipe that you're a little worried about, you can post. We're happy to answer, or Lauren or any other members that have already done a lot of hosting, because I know we've all had to cook at least one holiday meal in the past.
The other thing too is that if I know that sometimes these workshops get shared outside of our membership. So if you're not part of the Full Plate Living membership, if you've not joined us, we are 100% free. You can go to fullplateliving.org. You can sign up and join us, and you get access to workshops like this, recipes, and our private Facebook community. So be sure to join us there, and I'll put a link in the comments.
Yes, definitely. Amy, thank you for sharing that. I have one last question just from what has been tagged.
One more tip before I lose it.
Yeah.
Which is, make something that you feel fairly confident making. This is not the time to try that new dish that's really complicated with a ton of ingredients you haven't used. I will tell you, like, I was having an occasion with family, it was way back when I first started to cook, and I made risotto for the first time, and it was a pile of glop. It was glue. It was terrible. I was mortified. So just do yourself a favor and do something simple.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be extravagant and complicated for it to.
I also love how this can be so interactive with anyone of any age.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of fun and very delicious. My last question is this. On the sweet potatoes, does it matter if I leave the skin on or off? And I know that we gave some answers, shaving off the skin does cut your fiber in half. So keeping it on is going to be more nutritious. But I'm going to ask you, Lauren, as far as flavor and beauty and anything else involved in cooking, what do you prefer?
Well, I prefer the skin because I like the taste of the skin and I like the texture of it. There are plenty of people who don't. So, if you're not sure about your audience, maybe you peel one and leave the other with the skin on. And you give them the option to pull which one that they like.
Absolutely. Yes. And then the other thing that I did want to mention very quickly is that we assume sweet potatoes all taste the same just because they're called sweet potatoes, but the texture is slightly different and the flavor profile is slightly different as well. So it's not just the different color, the flavors are going to be different.
That's right. Yes. It's very strong in flavor, but I've really been enjoying the purple sweet potatoes. I feel like they're almost like have a bit of a vanilla flavor to them. And you may see them used in desserts. So
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Very true. And they're so pretty. The color is so vibrant. Okay, we have one more question. So I'm going to ask that one. I learned that for potatoes, cooked then cooled for hours or a day and reheat heat to eat will have the resistant starch benefit. Does it work with sweet potatoes as well?
I have read that too, but I'm going to put that back to Amy and Michelle because that's a little outside of my range.
Yes. So from what I have read in the past and what we've had our nutritionists say in the past is that yes, it works for potatoes. It works for very starchy things, right? So it also works for rice or brown rice, other grains, and even pastas. So yes, it will have the additional benefit of resistant starch. If you cook it, then cool it for maybe up to a day and then reheat again. So, on that note, thank you all for being here and sharing this very precious holiday time with us. I know my schedule is getting chaotic and I know everybody else's schedule is getting very, very busy. And so thank you for sharing an hour with us, spending an hour with us today. I hope that you all have a wonderful holiday season. Lauren, thank you for being here. I would love it if you would comment in the chat something that you liked about this workshop today, something that maybe Lauren inspired you to try or do, or even a food that you are excited to give a go after this workshop. And I think we will share some of those comments with you later, Lauren. And
thank you so much for having me again.
yes, the pleasure was ours. The food looks incredible. My mouth is watering. Yes, I'm having a hard time talking because I just wanted to eat all of them. And then if you don't mind just coming up to the screen, I'm going to say goodbye and go off stage. But I do want to have a few seconds of seeing that plate so we can really see the colors and how delicious everything is.
I'll pop off too. So thank y'all so much for joining today.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great holiday season.